You are listening to the Bravo Creative Podcast, hosted by Tom Baker. Thank you for listening. Your position has been triangulated. Drone Army has been dispatched to your location. Commencing attack run in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Bravo Creative Podcast, and thank you for listening. Right off the bat, I want to thank each and every one of you for listening. It makes this already fun project even more funner, and I really appreciate the kind words and the encouragement. And to those who have reached out personally to give input and critiques, how dare you? No, I'm just kidding. I really love all the feedback that I've been getting, and it has made this podcast for me a very inspiring, creative idea factory. So let me just clear up something for my own self as I wanted to start down this journey, down this road of the podcast. My intentions have changed a little, which is a good thing. I mean, that's the point, right? To evolve and grow. And if we're not adapting, we aren't growing or surviving. Anyways, I want to make one thing clear as to my intentions for this podcast. And I'm going to go on just a little short rant here. But my goal is to bring the 417 film, theater, creative community together. And having been in this headspace for quite a few years, I know the drill. It can get lonely. It can get tiresome. And then it can go 100 miles an hour with no steering wheel. And in all that, we never really get a chance just to sit and talk with each other. It just happens sporadically. And we don't get to talk about like what drives us or inspires us or where we make our mistakes or how we have to ultimately lick our wounds, dust ourselves off, and get right back into the fray. So that is the ultimate goal in this podcast, is to bring us together, to talk, to share, to inspire, create. And so here's my challenge / goal for you, is to reach out. You need help on a project? Reach out. You need someone to collaborate with? Reach out. You got that next great idea and you need to figure out how to get it to the next level? Reach out. Because I know for a fact the people that I've had on this podcast and talked to, and a lot of the people that are listening and are those great people giving feedback and critiques, are people that can help. And we are better together, and teamwork makes the dream work. So that's it for today. That is the rant. And because I have such a good podcast coming up here, I have a great guest. And speaking of teamwork, my guest had an idea. He's had a bunch of ideas, but he had one in particular. He assembled a team of your local 417 creatives, and they took his vision and they made something. Now, my guest is a great friend, and he became a great friend because of this process. And it's because I admired him, and we found a commonality of things. And I've missed him dearly due to our current worldly environment. He is the OG of taking massive and impossible ideas and creating something with it. And I'd like to welcome to the microphone the one, the only, the OG, Ducon Williams.
Thank you for the kind words.
What have you been up to, man? You've had a crazy couple years here.
Yeah, been up to anything but filmmaking, actually. Mostly focusing on family. Got 3 daughters. My oldest just barely turned 7 3 days ago. And I promised my wife I would build her a cabin when she married me, and then I made a couple films, which kind of got in the way for that. So I figured I better fulfill that.
The debt is due, right?
It's due, and we're about a week away from moving in.
Oh, that's awesome!
Yeah,
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
That's awesome. So, you have basically shut off all filmmaking for the time being.
Yes.
And what is that? What is that like? Go through that just a little bit. I mean, because you spent the better part of the last 2 years, probably.
I guess I should probably go back a little bit, because I have been doing filmmaking, just not making films. I've been paying for it. I've been paying for Vincent's Vow, trying to catch up on all the bills that I accumulated.
Sure.
And that's been the extent of it, trying to do that and build the cabin for my wife I promised her.
It's kind of the part nobody talks about, right?
Yeah, it really is, and it's not fun to talk about.
Right.
It's the most unpleasant side of filmmaking, and that is that it costs money.
So, well, you wrapped on Vincent's Vow in about what, May of 2020, correct?
Technically it was May of 2019.
Okay. When did you submit? Did you submit Vincent's Vow to a festival this year or last year?
We did this year. We submitted to the International Christian Music and Film Festival in Orlando. We did that in January, and the festival took place in June.
Okay. Yeah. So now you were still doing some edits.
Yes.
The first of this year, is that correct?
That is correct. In fact, I just finished editing, I think it was about a month ago. The edit was done, but I had licensed some music for the film that was for a certain duration of time.
Oh, gotcha.
And that time had suspended. It was for, long enough that we could get through the film festival and have it be legal to show publicly. And the people I licensed the music with had only given it a very short amount of time.
Window.
And so I got with our sound guy, Kong Tao, and he has a music program that I was kind of fond of, and we bought an instrument package, and I went down to his house, and we kind of made some music.
Scored it?
Yeah, we scored some stuff to replace the ones that were no longer licensed. So once I got that scored and put in, then I could say, okay, everything we have in this film is ours.
Now, did you use any of that stuff like in the trailers that you made? Any of that music?
Any of that particular music? No.
No. So you can still keep those, and you ain't got to go back and
I can definitely do that. That's fine.
That's good.
Yeah.
So
I got to say something about Kong here.
Go ahead.
I will never pass up an opportunity to say something about Kong Tao. That guy is amazing, and he's terrifying. Very terrifying. During production, he was always such a quiet guy, right? He would do the sound, but he knows everything about filmmaking, as far as I can tell.
Oh yeah,
he knows everything about filmmaking, and so for him, it takes 10 minutes for him to set up sound, and for the gaffer and the DP and grips and stuff, it took quite a while to light everything. So he'd just be standing around, and I could just smell the judgment. I could just every time I started feeling self-conscious, I would, where's Kong? Where's Kong? What's he doing? And sure enough, he'd be over there, and he'd have this look on his face, just this pained look on his face, like I wouldn't light it that way, And I never actually asked him, well, what had happened, and this happened twice during production. I'm not joking about this. I'm not sugarcoating this or joking one bit about this. Twice during production, I woke up in the middle of the night from a nightmare. And the nightmare was, I was laying in bed at night, and I look out the window, and moonlight's shining on this face with these big eyes, right? And it's Kong Tao outside my bedroom window. It was terrifying. And he would beam this grin, and then he dives through. I didn't know he was that agile. He dives through a glass window and takes his boom pole and starts flogging me with it. I woke up twice in the middle of the night to that nightmare. And so I would go back to set the next day and say, Kong, if I am making things too hard for you, please tell me what I need to change, because I'm tired of having
I will change my ways for you.
Yeah, but he's a really good guy.
No, he is. just because I have like next to zero knowledge of audio. It's kind of like that. It's the most important thing you have to have on the film set, but it's one of those things that you just don't. You worry more about your lens, and you worry more about your lighting, and you worry more about your actors and all this, and really how you hear all of it is super important. And Kong does a really good job, really, really good job. And you're right, he's quiet, but he does have just an air of judgment when he looks at you.
And I don't think he means to.
I don't think he does either.
But
I would be the same way.
Well, I'm going to have to disagree with you on one thing.
What's that?
And that is that judging by this podcast and how good your voice sounds, you have some knowledge on audio.
Oh, well, there's...
And I'm coveting your equipment.
I just spent a lot of money on equipment, so yeah.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Well, thank you.
I like the way your voice sounds with it. It's really good.
Well, there's all the kinds of little gizmos in here to make your voice sound even better, you know.
It's soothing. It really is.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, you can listen to the podcast, and it'll put you to sleep at night.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. As long as it keeps me asleep at night,
right.
And I don't have to drink of Kong, I'm good.
You're good to go. So with Vincent's Vow, you are done working on it.
Yes.
Like officially done working on it. Are you doing any is there any distribution stuff that I know that there was some talk that you had some people that were interested in it. How is that process kind of going?
Currently in negotiations with 2 distributors.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. They're talking, one of them's talking about some TV deals and foreign distribution as well. And the other one isn't quite sure. They're still kind of reviewing some things.
If I can learn the other language, can I dub your voice for the film?
For the other language?
If they need to put a different language on there, I'll just dub I'll be you.
There you go. There you go. Hey, great. Do you know another language?
No, I don't. I'd have to do some learning on that one. So have you all looked at a premiere that would be a local premiere that might be, where people could come and see it locally?
We've looked at that a lot. Unfortunately, because of everything that COVID has affected, then we haven't been able to just work that out. And, we talked about the Moxie. The Moxie is a nice little venue.
Oh, yeah.
But with their current restrictions and everything like that, you'd get 15, 20 people in that theater. Yeah. And to us, it doesn't make any business sense as far as, that would be coming out of my pocket to pay their rent and everything. So we have talked about it, but we just haven't found the right solution.
No, I would imagine it's super difficult, especially in today's current environment. It makes it very tough to figure out the whole movie thing. Even Hollywood can't figure it out for the most part.
Yeah, it's a learning curve for just about everybody.
It's kind of unfortunate. You did anybody that knows you and knows the production and has worked and knows people that worked on it and how much time and effort and heartache and late nights that go into it, to not be able to see it yet is kind of
I can't relate to anyone on that. I've seen it too many times.
I bet you have.
Yeah, but I do feel for those that haven't, because I know that a lot of people that worked on it are really looking forward to seeing it. And if we cannot figure out something for a public premiere very soon, then I'm going to just end up providing an online link. Those who worked on it can actually watch it on their own time.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah. It wouldn't be awesome, but it would be cool to be able to see it. It would be awesome to be able to see it as a group, everybody that worked on it.
Which is kind of unfortunate, because you end up getting a variety of different sound systems when you're watching from your home or from your computer or TV. And when I did the sound design, I had theater in mind. I had certain vibrations in mind, and you're just not going to get the same experience.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So that part is unfortunate, plus the promotion side of it. When you get together for a premiere and you kind of reunite with cast and crew, that's a pretty special time.
Oh, yeah.
And that would definitely be my preference. But we're just paying attention to landscape.
Well,
the film landscape right now.
I wish you luck on it.
Thank you.
If you need any help, let me know.
Psychological help I could definitely use.
I'll pray for you. How about that?
Yeah. Oh man, I appreciate it. I need it. And this is very therapeutic, so you're helping already.
Well, good. I mean, you know what? I think I would have to say that I would be lying if I didn't say that starting the podcast was a little bit, it was a little scary because it's just, I do video. I don't do, podcasts and stuff like that. But the idea of having the opportunity to get back and talk with people, has been very inspiring, but it's also made me feel good to just get back out and talk about the things that, obviously we like talking about that you don't, I bore my wife talking about this stuff,
Sure.
Just kind of like, okay. And sometimes she'll ask me a question like right before she goes to bed. And I know that the only reason why she asked me is so that I can put her to sleep. And so, yeah, there we are.
That's funny.
When you started the process of Vincent's Vow, and I want to get into that a little bit, but what were, if you could go back, what were your early influences? What was your point of reference on that? Because just to start a film, like write a script, and I know a little bit of the backstory as far as you writing the script and kind of what you wanted to get across in it. But where did that idea come up in your head? Was, okay, I'm going to make a film. And I know you've made other films in the past. So where did you kind of get into that medium of filmmaking?
Of filmmaking itself, or the Vincent Scott story?
Yeah. Let's simplify it. Yeah.
Oh,
how did you get into that medium?
Complete transparency, to impress a girl. I was single at the time.
I love it.
And
it is the most base instinct is to go out and just peacock. Yeah.
Well, and I had never dreamed of filmmaking, and it never crossed my mind. And I was at her house one day, and her sisters were talking about how cool it would be to take their sister's story that she had written and make it into a movie. And there were some people there that asked why. And for some reason, my response was, why not? And they said, are you serious? And at first I wasn't, but when they asked, am I serious? I was like, well, yeah. And a week later, I had bought a camera. I had never pressed the record button on a video camera in my life at that point. But obviously I was naive because this story was set during the French and Indian War.
Oh, wow.
So I started with a feature.
A period piece
feature that had, I think it was like 37 speaking roles right around there. It was a disaster, but it was a great learning experience. And once I had completed this film, it ended up being a 2-hour and 40-minute feature.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, it's just naivety. Right. But it gave me some rich experience, but also I became intoxicated with how awesome it was that you could take these little markings on a paper that tell a story and visually create it. I was fascinated that could happen.
Right.
And from there I was like, this is really neat stuff. It's very fulfilling to me. And it's a very powerful medium that you can do a lot of good with. And so from there, I was just like, yeah, I want to make films.
How many days was that shoot?
I didn't even keep track.
But it was enough that you didn't remember how many days it was.
It was, yeah. It was a tremendous amount.
And you had didn't you have horses in it? And
yes.
All kinds of stuff. And didn't you go through a plate glass window?
That was my next feature. My next feature was a Western.
So you did 2 Westerns?
No, the
French and
Indian War was a period piece that's closer to the Revolutionary War.
Okay.
So the Old West culture wasn't really part of that. I mean, they were tricorn hats,
right?
And revolutionaries, and we had some half-naked men running around with knives and war paint, and The next one was definitely a Western, and that's the one where I dove through a real glass window just because I couldn't get whatever Hollywood uses, the sugar windows or whatever.
Now, did you have the girl at this point?
A different girl.
Okay.
Yeah. So the girl that I was trying to impress ended up starring in my first film.
Okay.
And yeah, that didn't work out. I didn't do well enough on the film, I guess. No, that wasn't it. But things worked out. Things worked out great.
That's
God
cool.
took care of me, and God took care of her, and we're all good. We're happy. She has more kids than I do.
Oh,
so
now
I've got 3.
You got 3.
Yes.
Okay. Well, you know, it's funny because I kind of attribute photography as my kind of the gateway into me getting into, you know, film production and all that kind of stuff, because I learned the technical side of photography. But that was for a girl as well. I was probably 13 years old, and I decided to go into the yearbook club.
Okay.
And the yearbook club would get you out of class, and that's where it was. I think it was me and my buddy were the only 2 guys in the yearbook club. So we're like, hey, we're gonna be like, this is gonna be awesome, you know. And I think he wound up getting a girlfriend out of it. I didn't. A part of that was, I think it was 80 pounds, and so that, you know,
her loss,
right?
Man.
And but what happened was I fell in love with that medium, and I fell in love with that whole. Kind of like what you said. It's an admiration of how technical things get, and the kind of the process in a way, and then that just kind of built into, you know, over the years, finally getting into the medium of making films and telling stories and acting and things like that.
That's awesome.
So now, had you acted before doing your movie?
I had acted on stage.
Okay, so you had stage time.
But I ended up starring the male role in this movie just because of the intensive time it would take, and I didn't think I could find anybody else that would dedicate that much time to the role.
Was there a kissing scene in it?
No.
Oh, Ducon.
You
should have wrote that in there, man.
You know, I've never actually played a role where I kissed.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that by design?
I've kissed one person in my entire life. One, well, I mean, you know, there's a few pecks in there, but
right.
But my wife is the only person I've ever kissed.
Well, good for you.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
Because the rest of us actors, we have to get out and we decide to go out and kiss everybody, I think.
Well, I might be a method actor. No, I don't know.
So, what was the name of that first film?
The Search.
The Search. And the second film? The Western?
There were 2 versions of it. One was a really long version called The Mild Wild West. And the shorter version was called Heart River.
Heart River.
Yeah.
Can those be seen anywhere?
Funny story. Well, my first answer would be no. I wouldn't do that. But this distributor, one of them that we're talking to about Vincent's Vow, actually wants to try to distribute Heart River on the foreign market.
Really?
Yeah.
So they've watched it?
Yeah. They haven't watched it. They're intrigued by it. And we did get a distribution offer for that film at one point, but their stipulations asked a lot of us without promising much at all, and we just didn't feel like it was the right match. So we turned that one down, and I just didn't even think about it until these guys were like, hey, can we see that? And so I'm in the process of uploading that right now. They can take a look at it, but it was shot on mini DV tapes in standard definition before I knew that there was such thing as professionals in the state of Missouri. It was just my neighbors and friends and stuff in the backyard. But
did you edit it?
I did.
Did you have to learn how to edit it on a linear machine, or did you digitize all of it?
Digitized it.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So
that's a long process back then.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, the tape, it wasn't that bad because getting it off of the tape, there those mini DV tapes,
Right.
you just click a button that says capture,
Oh,
and it
okay.
would just go through the tape and make just a digitized file
Okay.
of what was on the tape. So it really wasn't that bad. It was a little slower than we have now, but
Sure.
it worked out.
Okay. So you got your start in film then, and you did 2 feature-length films right off the bat,
Yes.
pretty much.
Actually 3.
You did 3 feature-length films right off the bat.
I did one that I don't tell people about. It was more of an experimental film, but it was a feature. And
Was that shot here in town?
It was in the state of Idaho.
Idaho, okay.
Yeah, up on a farm where my mom lives. And it was 5 weeks from conception to completion.
Now, when you say experimental, how did you know what experimental was back then?
I'm actually glad you asked that because I don't know that the term experimental really captures it. It was, how do I put this lightly? It was on a farm and people were bored, and I was trying to give them something to do. And
so the result was a film.
So yeah, I told them, hey, you guys are bored, let's make a film. And so me and my sister threw together a story at record pace and held an audition and cast it. And literally from conception to completion was 5 weeks.
And that was a feature length?
It was an hour and 40-minute film.
Seriously?
Yeah. Yeah. It's boring.
You know what? But I will say this. That is, to me, that's interesting. And I want to get back to all that later on, but that's very interesting to me. So do you have, and I think I know the answer to this. I think we've talked about this before, but for the sake of the podcast, early movie influences, did you have any? Like any that really pop out in your head that you go, man, that was always a movie I liked to watch when I was a kid?
Not early on, no. I actually had very little interest in movies until I wanted to impress this girl.
Right.
And even then, I didn't have that much of an interest in watching movies. I actually despised them at the time, thought they were a colossal waste of time.
So you looked at film, just that medium.
I had a disdain for it.
So because of the length and because of the subject matter, it was just kind of like, yeah.
In some ways, yes. Length and subject matter is probably a good way to put it. I didn't have a disdain for making them because I never thought I would. I didn't know. I didn't know you could. I thought that was just something that multi-billion-dollar companies did. I didn't know there was such thing as independent film at the time. I was a naive kid.
Right.
And when they started talking, that would be so cool if we could make this into a movie. It never even entered my mind that that was even a possibility. And then the more they talked about it, I was like, well, why not? I mean, if it's a possibility, why couldn't we?
Sure.
And now we are where we are today.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So if you didn't have early movie influences, and then yet you are tasked, and specifically on the case of Vincent's Vow, you wrote that script. There was a lot of trips back and forth to Kansas City, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Where that kind of all happened.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about your inspiration. And from the creative side, what inspired you? What were things that you saw, I guess positive or negative, that inspired you to write that and to go back? And because the thing that's amazing to me about all of it is that there are a lot of people out there that have yet to make a feature-length film, right? And they have the tools, they have the capabilities, they're more than capable of being able to do what you were able to do. How many years ago was that?
When I did the first film?
Yeah, the first film.
It was 08.
08?
Let's see. 07, I think. So about 13 years ago.
And do you ever attribute any of that to just stupid confidence of going in and just saying, I can do it?
Yes. I feel like that I had a little bit of advantage by being completely naive because I didn't research. because every bit of research out there says start with shorts.
Sure.
Do a short
You're
first,
right.
perfect this department, then do another short and perfect this department, and work up to where you can do a feature. And I just didn't look at any of that. I just thought, I didn't even know there were shorts. I thought if you were going to make a movie, it was a feature. You had to tell a whole story.
Right.
And so I just was pedal to the metal and just started making a film.
Yeah.
Started thinking, okay, what's got to go into this? Oh, this script says that we got to have this type of costume and these horses. And so I just started asking around and just immediately started producing, not even knowing what producing was.
Right.
Having no idea how to do it, just complete ambition.
That's crazy.
And
not crazy. It's crazy, the concept, the idea that you were able to not only, bridge the gap on it, because I've worked on, just within the last 2.5 years of being in this area, I've worked on, 4, not even feature films. And that is a daunting task on top of all the other things in life that you have. I mean, the reality of it is on independent films, you really don't make much money on an independent film in general.
Right.
And you still got to make money in real life.
In real life, yes.
And if you have a wife and kids, then you've got to make money to support them and you've got to be available to pick kids up from school. It's a very crazy process. And it's not like, it's kind of like what you were talking about earlier about, your penance has come up and building a cabin. Because promises are made on films, even if they're 5 to 6 days. You're like, honey, I'm not going to be around. I've got this kind of stuff.
Yes.
Can you fix the sink? And you're like, well, I'll get around. I promise as soon as this is done, I'll get around to it. But that is that's a harsh reality of the itch that we have.
You clearly have some experience.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and to me, not to say that you're crazy, that is a crazy concept to be able to get to that point and do that. And all I can say is knowing like how much work you put into Vince's Valley, and me and David had a couple laughs at your expense the other night whenever he was here, because you're like, we were talking about his film,
The Pictures.
The Pictures.
Yeah.
About how he wrote, directed, and shot his film. Mm-hmm. And then we were like, well, thank God you didn't act in it as well, right? Because
that's funny.
He said that that is a very tough, that's a very tough process to be that like ultra auteur that isn't just the writer, the director, and the lenser and the producer of it, but you also, in how many of those films did you act in as well?
All of them.
Mm-hmm. And you luckily didn't have to lens anything in Vincent's Vow, because you did have a very capable
that was my
cinematographer on that one.
That was my first time actually having someone else to shoot it, and it was very nice. It was very nice.
So going back to inspiration, how did that idea, had there been you'd been doing some shorter stuff in between, you'd been doing some Satos, and you'd been doing some just like local film commercials, that kind of stuff. And then there's another film that's floating around there that I heard that you did too, with Mike Strain. There's another one out there floating around too that is yet to be like finished, or is it never going to be finished, or? And I don't know the 100. I've only heard of the legend of it.
The legend. That's pretty good. Boy, all of this is connected, and I'm just trying to figure out how to really approach the answer to your question.
This is one of the main reasons why I wanted you on here, because I've thought about this idea, because there was one night when we were when I helped you do some BTS stuff, and then I think David Watson was gone one day. We set up the cabin up there, and we talked about a lot of this stuff, but it always, and that's kind of what in my intro, that's what intrigued me about a lot of this stuff, is because that was kind of the beginning, kind of planted seed in my head that you know what? I've always kind of told myself I couldn't do this stuff.
Right. Okay.
But it does, you can.
You can. Absolutely.
There's just a mindset that you really have to be in, and it's a great mindset once you get to it. It's fun. It's bloody, but it's great. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Mm.
So go, and I'm sorry to interrupt you again.
No, that's
but,
okay. So there was a what we call a sizzle.
Okay.
That was a pitch film. We had shot a short to pitch to studios to try to get a trilogy off and running. It is a trilogy that my dad wrote called The Black Mariachi. Very fascinating books that he put together. And all I'm going to really say about that right now is we got it put together, and it raised some eyebrows, and we were in talks with Paramount.
Really?
We were in talks with Paramount, and a situation arose where me and my dad were going to be part of the producing team. And one of the guys we were working with had kind of, he said, go ahead and reach out to the people that you would like to be cast into it and see what their interest level is.
Sure.
And I took that to mean reach out to anybody that we would like to be in, you know. So I ended up reaching out to, what was that guy's name? Jonah Hill's agent, Tommy Lee Jones' agent. Several of these guys, and the agents responded, and ultimately the agents ended up contacting Paramount, saying, is this a real film? I mean, is this really happening?
Is it valid?
And
because you're not a known...
And because Paramount hadn't confirmed anything solid with us, then somebody had to be a scapegoat. And I misunderstood what the guy was telling me. He was actually trying to say, reach out to the people you personally know that you would like to be in the film and see their interest level. And I thought he was saying, reach out to anybody that we would like to be in the film and see their interest level. And so yeah, I ended up talking with a few people in Hollywood, and Paramount was pretty upset about people contacting them, and I ended up getting ousted.
Really?
Yeah. There had to be a scapegoat for the thing to keep going, basically for Paramount's trust to be restored. And so it was a little bit of a sore spot for me, but looking back, it was the greatest blessing I could have had, because here we are 3 years later, and they're still trying to find a way to make the film. And I've got one produced, and we're talking to distributors since then.
Okay. Good for you, man.
So
good for you.
It was a fantastic blessing. I wouldn't change that for anything.
So the idea of Vincent's Vow. Now, we've talked a little bit about this.
Sure.
And not to get too far into the weeds on all of it, give me just kind of, can you look back on a specific time or a specific place that something struck you and said, this idea is going to go somewhere, and I'm going to see this process through. And I know that it takes stages. Mm-hmm. You know, obviously, you started writing the script. You came up with a concept, started writing the script. I think you had a treatment initially, didn't you? And then you started writing the script?
Yeah, I had written a treatment first.
And that was all during kind of a commute time for you, wasn't it? Did a lot of that happen then?
What do you mean by commute time?
Weren't you traveling back and forth to Kansas City?
Yes.
The thing that intrigues me is when you're driving to Kansas City, you're obviously not writing.
Not physically, but in my mind.
In your mind. So can you talk a little bit about that process?
Sure.
Because that's a difficult process of being able to kind of write something into your head, and then when you get to where you're going, okay, I've fleshed this out.
Sure.
Thought-wise.
Sure. So if it's okay, I'll answer the entire question.
Sure.
The conception of the idea and what the process was like. Try to do that in one. So there was not a specific event in my life or specific thing that I saw that made me come up with the idea for Vincent's Vow. It was several things that I saw. And it all had to do with broken relationships and general hatred that was increasing in our world. And there was so much, people were putting like a magnifying glass on this social issue or this political issue and saying, this is what's causing it, this is what's causing it. But I saw it differently. And what I saw was that humanity generally did not have the correct definition of love. Everyone was looking for people to love them, but they weren't understanding what it actually was.
Right.
And I didn't really understand it myself.
So kind of their compass was off.
Yeah, I felt like mine was too. Because I had a couple broken relationships, and I just kept thinking about it. And at this time, I had 2 daughters now. I had barely had my second daughter. And I got thinking about it, and it's like, boy, when they get to be teenagers, they don't want to listen to Dad. I probably ought to come up with some way to teach them that's not me preaching to them. And that became a little bit of a catalyst for me, that what if I don't stick around? We could die any day.
Sure.
What if I don't stick around, and what if my daughters get to a point where they think they like a boy, they maybe want to get married, maybe don't, but have no idea what love is.
Yeah.
And that was a huge, huge catalyst for me. So for the sake of my daughters, I started writing this story that I had no idea would transform me as a person too. But in answer to your question, during this commute, I was doing a construction job in Kansas City at the time, and we were renting a place. So in the evenings, because we were out of town, a lot of the guys would just watch TV, and they were pretty bored, try to find something to do to pass the time.
Right.
But for me, I was just jazzed about this idea, and so I was just researching, what is this? What is love? How do we define it? How can we reverse this process of broken relationships and try to help restore relationships? So the best thing I thought to do in my research, start scripting. And so I just started visualizing, what common problems arise in our modern world, and how can we bring all of these common problems to one root problem, and then have a character that finally discovers that and decides to focus on the root solution.
Sure.
That all of the common problems can have a general solution that covers them. So in my commute back and forth to Kansas City, yes, you're right, there's a lot of drive time. There's a lot of time to reflect. And I would put on music, not with words, it was soundtrack music. And there was a particular song from the Wonder Woman soundtrack called "We Are All to Blame." I don't know if you've seen that movie.
I have seen it.
But this is where I've actually had some influence from a movie. There's a scene in there where Wonder Woman discovers everything she believes in is a lie.
Okay.
Right. She thought that there was this Ares guy that basically influences the hatred of all men, and I didn't notice there was a common thread to where my mind was and where the scene was, and she's just kind of stuck in this rut, like, no, I killed Ares. All these men should stop fighting now. I killed Ares. And Steve Trevor, her boyfriend or whatever he was to her.
Her love of her life, yeah.
No, thank you. Yeah, love of her life. He basically says this line in there, you know what, we're all to blame.
Oh, okay. I know what you're talking about.
And that's where they have a very, there's a lot of stuff blowing up.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
a high pressure situation and everything. And she's just slumped. All of her motivation goes out the window, and he's doing everything he can to save some people. And he's trying to answer her questions at the same time. Anyway, there's a piece of music that is playing during their conversation by Rupert Gregson Williams. And I was so intrigued.
Did he score the whole thing?
He scored the whole thing. And I was so intrigued by this piece of music that on one drive from Kansas City to home, it was about 2.5 hour drive, I put that song on repeat.
On loop.
And the entire drive, I listened to this 2-minute song. And while I was doing it, I wrote in my mind the entire Romeo and Juliet scene of Vincent's Vow.
Okay.
I visualized the whole thing over and over and over and over again.
And folks, it is possible, because not only has Ducon done it, I've done it on a couple of projects too, where you start at the very beginning and you just whittle it down into its little, almost to where you memorize it like a script in your head.
Yes.
And then you sit down at a piece of, at a keyboard, and you just basically start typing it out.
That was one of the easiest scenes to type out, because I had thought about it so much. And I used the Romeo and Juliet thing because, to me, that was part of the problem that I was seeing. So many people had got the idea that Romeo and Juliet's the greatest love story ever told, but it's absolutely tragic. It's terribly tragic, and it has a lot of self-absorption in that story. And I love Shakespeare for it. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
I love what Shakespeare was actually trying to do with it. But I kind of pricked at it a little bit, and because I had visualized this scene over and over and over again, listening to this piece of music, and when the music would hit its climax, I would think that, this is when Vincent does his thing. I won't spoil the movie for anybody, but he does a certain thing that kind of a surprise to the audience. Our test audiences and stuff were really surprised by it. And those climatic moments with swelling music and stuff has actually had quite an impact.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you got through that process.
Yeah.
And you wrote basically a treatment off of that. And then from that, you kind of had probably an idea where you wanted your dialogue to go.
For the most part, yes.
You knew what your message was.
Yes.
So how much did you learn about this journey that you were going on as far as finding out what love meant and how do you define it? How much of that was learned during the writing of the script, or the conclusion, I guess, in your mind?
I'm going to put it this way, Tom. I don't know that I've learned all of it.
That's awesome.
That's in there.
There's a long life to live, right?
It is. And the reason I say this, I had quite a spiritual experience after the movie was done, where I just realized I didn't understand love, even though I had finished the movie and had written it and thought, hey, I got a pretty good understanding of this. I ran into a situation where I just felt the Spirit telling me, in this situation, you've been acting selfish, you've been jealous, you've been envious, none of which is love. And so that's why I say I'm still learning it. But I've learned a lot of, I guess, good points on the subject through the making and the writing of the film, but the application of it, I'm finding much more difficult.
Do you, and we'll kind of shift gears a little bit, but are you completely insane?
Yes.
To write, act, direct, and produce a film?
Again, I would have to say that because of my naivety, I think I've been given a little bit of an advantage. I've never known anything different.
So do you look at that as a blessing?
I do.
Okay. Well, that's...
I do. I do think
I
it's
do
insane.
too. I really do.
Well, now that I'm meeting, people like you and other people that are telling me it's insane, I'm starting to believe it. But you see what I'm saying? But I don't know what it looks like to you guys on the outside.
Sure.
I know what it is for me, and that is I want to tell a story, and I want to do everything I can to tell the story. And in that sense, I don't mind it. Does it get overwhelming sometimes? Absolutely.
I think at first pass, it looks absolutely insane to do it.
Mm-hmm.
On the second pass, and I can only speak from just the observation, there was one night in particular where we were at somebody's house.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Was that when it was raining?
It was raining. It was cold.
Yeah.
That night, from what I saw on that set that night, you went from this scene to this scene to this scene to this scene, and none of those were easy. It was a pretty heavy day for just about everybody, I think, on set. It was just a heavy day. Kind of didn't know that that's what it was going to be when I got there. I thought, oh, it's going to be kind of, but it was a heavy day.
Yeah.
That intrigued me, number one, because coming from a stage background of doing, performance on a stage background, I mean, you have 2 hours to thread the needle.
Right.
And there is no stops and starts, and you just kind of go. But then what you realize when you're on set is that you got to go, and then you might have to sit, and you might have to wait a while the gaffer comes in and the audio guy comes in, and you guys figure out your camera angles and all that. But what was amazing was that you were making decisions on that stuff along with, craft services and all the other things that are coming into this. And you're doing that, and then you're stopping and you're going right back into a scene and being required to pull an emotional context out of something and go, okay, where are we at on this? I would imagine that would be confusing.
Yeah.
And did you ever run into things like that on set by being the director and actor and kind of trying to find your place in all of it? Because I would imagine that would be super. I mean, granted, you wrote it and you kind of knew the arc, but getting to where each one of those emotional cues were satisfied, because again, you've got a budget that you've got to adhere to, and so I got to nail this, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the stress level on that?
I gave it all to God. Let me just put it that way. I don't remember a time being overly stressed.
Really?
I remember situations where I started to feel the stress, and I just take a deep breath and say, okay, what's the solution? And just try to focus on the solution. There was one time where I was mildly upset about something that happened on set, and we were getting ready to roll an emotional scene, and so I tried to just channel that mildly upsetness into the character and use it. Yeah.
And it does work.
It does.
It does work.
It does. Now, when I say that, we had a lot of stressful things that came up, and I remember one particular thing I'll tell you about. We had cast one of the primary characters. A man from Kansas City was playing this part, and we had already shot a full day with him. And our first big shoot day, we had quite an expensive day because there was a lot of people that was going to be on set that day. And I had shown up to set early and kind of got myself organized, was really excited about it, knew it was going to be a hard day. And about 45 minutes before shoot time, I got a message from this guy saying, I'm sorry to do this, but I'm not well and haven't been for a while, and I can't do the film. And we had already shot some stuff with him, and he was one of the integral characters. And I remember just kind of my heart dropping for a little bit, like everybody is coming for this particular night, and this character is the most important one of the night. And I remember just thinking, wow, God, I'm really curious to see your miracle today.
And why you did this.
and why you did this. So, so I let Mike, my co-producer, know about it, and I'm trying to think, okay, what do I do here? And so I called Jonna, our casting director, and she comes over, and I explain the situation to her, and we both just kind of look at each other, and she says, well, I have a few options. We could call some people over. I'm like, let's get some people over here. And three guys showed up, auditioned for the part with the understanding that they would be performing in a few minutes and would take the character for about 5 more shoot days, not knowing anything about the character or the script or anything beforehand. And these 3 guys came in and auditioned, and I had to make a choice. And we picked Grant Morose for the part.
Now, which part did he play?
He played Stephen.
At the wedding?
At the wedding, yes. Right, yeah. Oh man, I'll never forget the look on his face. I mean, he had that deer in the headlights look on his face as I'm trying to explain to him, okay, this is the character, this is his arc. And he's just like, and I'm like, oh, and by the way, we're going to roll in about 15 minutes. In your first shot, you got to be kissing a girl you've never met. And he's just like, okay. And he was a champion. He's got a prosthetic leg.
He did do really good.
And he just jumped right in and just took off with it.
Yeah, he did do really good. That was a cool night.
It was.
Of being on set.
Oh, are you talking was that the wedding night?
The wedding night, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. That was a cool night.
That was a cool night.
That was a hard night.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that's in answer to your question. I think there was one time.
And I have so much of that footage. I just need to give you guys all that footage. I've got all that BTS footage.
Oh man,
and a lot of it. I've watched it a couple times. Like, this stuff looks really good. I need to get these out to even for like, because when this thing takes off and gets like really popular, they're gonna want to have a director commentary and all that.
You're excited.
And you've had a few people that have done some of that stuff though too.
Yes.
So do you have any other footage from that stuff as well?
I do have some stuff. There were times where David would roll on the red.
Oh, nice.
On the red. Just some behind the scenes stuff. And you've probably, you saw the videos that I've been making of some of the cast and crew.
Which, by the way, the video you did for me, and that was awesome. By the way,
cool.
And you actually made me like start crying. What happened was whenever I got it, my mom was actually. I was at my mom and dad's house when I got it, and I got this cool little video that you put out, and it was so cool. And if you all don't know, so when Ducon was kind of doing some of the promotion for the film, you took a lot of time on that.
Yeah.
And he took a ton of time. And guys, I was a bit part in the movie.
Oh no, you were a big part.
Big
part, Tom.
And he, like, the way the video came out, you'd have thought like I was one of the main characters in the film, and you did such a good job. Which that was a funny day in and of itself.
Yes, it was.
Because I got a phone call from you, and you're like, "Hey, I need you to come in and play a pawn owner." And I go, "Okay, do you got a script?" You go, just make it up." I was like, "All right, cool."
And you were a jerk, man. I mean, you play a pawn owner jerk really well.
I used to frequent a lot of pawn stores, man. So I know I channeled my my inner pawn store.
Man, with how nice of a guy you are, I started to doubt you could do it. But man, after that first take, I was like, man, Tom's really got this.
If you could go back to the beginning of this process, number one, what would you tell your less experienced self of navigating this major feature film? And what would you do differently?
I would tell myself to allow more time for pre-production and communicating with your team ahead of time.
Very smart.
So you don't end up having to try to explain things on set.
Do you think doing that would allow a cheaper budget? Does pre-production, do you think there's a causality correlation between more pre-production equals a cheaper production?
I do. I think you're going to save money and time in production if you spend more time in pre-production.
And friends.
Yeah. What are you saying, Tom?
No, I'm not saying anything.
What have you heard?
No, I would
I need to listen to your other podcast?
No, not at all.
Joking.
I would think that would be one of those, it opens up the door for more stress, right. Not having that,
right.
that very robust pre-production. And then when you get on set, all of a sudden you're making decisions that you go, ooh, we kind of sloughed off that decision for later on. And then it becomes like a last minute thing. And then that's when I think people typically on set, at least what I've seen, is that's when you start seeing the tempers flare on that.
Yeah. And I emphasized communication a lot on set. I wanted to make sure I was communicating with everybody, but I assumed that because I knew the story inside out and I was ready to go, that we could just start shooting. And I had the conversations with the crew.
Sure.
But not enough of them.
Yeah.
And I definitely would change that. But to compensate for my mistake in pre-production, because we were rolling in production, I would try really hard. I mean, a lot of sleepless nights just making sure I was communicating with every department, and sometimes I'd still miss things.
Yeah.
And it would be spur of the moment. What about this? Oh, yeah, I didn't think of that. Okay.
So
let's
you're
do
either
this.
going to catch it on your film crew or you're going to catch it with your spouse, probably.
Yeah. Oh. Again, you have experience.
Right.
But yeah.
So how many revisions of the script did you have?
I had 12.
You had 12 revisions. And did you do all the revisions of the script?
Yes.
You did?
Yes. So, but I had a couple script consultants. One of them was my dad. He's a writer. And I had hired Claire Hutchinson, who is a professional script analyst, and just had a couple other people that would read it that would give me feedback.
Sure.
And most of their feedback was your dialogue is way too long. Cut it down, get to the point quicker.
People don't talk that long.
Yeah, people don't talk that long. You're going to bore your audience. Show, don't tell. Stuff like that.
Right.
And so I'd go back to the script and revise it and try to say, okay, this is what I'm trying to say here. How do I say it in the shortest words possible?
So from the very beginning of the time when you actually started typing the first words of dialogue on the script till the final version, how long was that process?
An entire year.
So that was 1 year
Yes.
of work, was basically hammering out that script.
Yes.
Just so everybody knows.
Just on my off time, obviously.
So everyone knows how long this process probably, I would think in general, probably takes about that long.
Yeah.
I would think in some cases maybe even longer than that.
Right. For a tight feature film, I'd recommend about a year, because you need that time. You need that time to relook at scenes and just let it rest,
Right.
and then come revisit it and find out how bad you were on your last draft. 'Cause
Sure.
I had a lot of that. I'd let it sit for a month, and then go back and read it, and like, oh, now I know how to shorten this.
Right.
You know, it was just like,
Well, it's like
get your mind off of it for a little while. Go have some experience and some stuff, and then come back and read it because you've forgotten some of it.
production was roughly about 28 days of principal photography on it, and then
we had 25 of principal photography, but we had 3 days of reshoots.
But those 3 days lasted. It took a little while on scheduling on that, didn't it?
It was more like it was spaced out, like sometimes 2 months apart.
Let's talk about your production crew.
Okay,
just a little bit. Now I know you had David Watson was your
phenomenal guy. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very capable. He was your cinematographer, and then you had, who was your first AD?
Madison
Strain.
Yeah.
Then Kong was audio primarily. There was. Did you have anybody else do audio?
Yeah. There were 4 days that he missed, and he had Jamie Talamantes, I think is how you pronounce her
Jamie.
name.
Yeah, I remember
she was
that.
there for 3 days.
Talk about getting a crew together.
Okay.
And talk about that process, because I think a lot of this, you build the script, and then obviously the next part is what, after you build the script, is getting your team together, isn't it? And getting money together and figuring out how you're going to navigate all that stuff. And how long did that process take from the moment you got the script done till getting the team assembled, and then ultimately scheduling and figuring out, all right, we're going to start filming?
Well, during rewrites of the script, a lot of conversations were already happening about what I was doing and getting people involved. And basically, I think the first person I thought of was Mike Strain, because of all of his experience, and he's just a nice guy. And we had worked,
got a ton of experience.
Yeah. And he had worked with me on that Black Mariachi short that we did, and I just always liked him. And so I reached out to him and was like, hey, this is what I'm doing. And we worked that out. He was really receptive to the idea, and I was vetting like a dozen different cinematographers, and I had done a Sato film with David Watson, where he had a DSLR, a Canon, and I thought he did a really good job. But I was naive. He had a great eye and a great passion and a good knowledge of cameras, and I kept thinking, man, he could probably do this, but I want this to be cinematic. Can he do cinematic? And kept asking myself, can he do it? Well, we had shot a, what do they call a concept, proof of concept of Vincent's Vow. A little 5-minute proof of concept.
I saw that.
And because David was a good friend of mine, and I knew he had a good knowledge of things, I had him DP that. And he did a really, really good job. And so the more I thought about it, maybe he can do cinematic. And for me, the clincher was when Mike and I sat down to talk about a DP. He said, "Why not David? That looked great." And that was the clincher. You know, I had already been thinking about it, but I kind of had this expectation that cinematographers were like these big, high-profile people. And once I had approached David about it, he was what I like to say, giddier than a half-schnockered teenage gal, you know, at midnight.
I asked him, I said, how many days did you have like that you didn't want to go to work? And he goes, it never happened. He goes, I was so just jazzed to just be there.
Yeah, he embraced it right off.
That's awesome.
And so, but I still wasn't sure what we were shooting on, you know.
Right.
And he wasn't sure, and he was kind of curious, you know, and one day an opportunity came up to buy that red.
Yeah.
And so I had alerted him I was going down to Little Rock, Arkansas to buy the red from my friend Cherokee Turner. And so he was twiddling his thumbs, waiting here in Springfield for me to get back because he wanted to start working with it immediately. Right. So immediately, right after I had bought it, you know, you'd think that after paying that much money for a camera, you'd want to hold on to it. I was like, David, take it, learn it. And he did.
Really?
He took it with him, and he started reading stuff, and he started playing around with it, and he would send me, this is what it looks like, you know, in what's the S-Log, and this is what it looks like colored. And
oh, yeah.
He was just very studious and excited, and I was so glad to have him.
Yeah. I mean, that's invaluable to have someone that wants to absorb that, you know, level of technical, you know, before you even, I mean, that's not even, I would even say that's not even the fun part, you know. It's required.
Right.
It's required, but it can be daunting, you know, especially, you know, looking at, you know, red is just the media capture alone on that
man.
is a pain in the butt.
It's
but the result is great.
An interesting thing as far as crew goes. I can't mention crew without mentioning Bradley Mowell, the gaffer. So we had shot a short. I was just a carpenter on this short. I built a set of stairs for Shannon Sherrow's short called Nostalgic.
Nostalgia, yeah.
And Madeline Grace, my lead actress for Vincent's Vow, was in that. So I was kind of intrigued to come help with that on set.
So was Nostalgia done before Vincent's Vow?
It was.
Was it really?
It was.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. It was shot before it. Yeah, it was finished before it too. But on that set, then there was Bradley Mowell and Dylan Bridges, and I had never met them before. And I'll be honest, I thought they were kind of weird. I'm sure they thought the same of me because I was wearing a straw cowboy hat and stuff on this set. And anyway, I was just intrigued by their knowledge, very intrigued. And for Vincent's Vow, I had a gaffer and a grip and an art director lined up to shoot with us. And 2 days before our first shoot date, they dropped out.
Really?
Yeah.
You lucked out by getting those two guys.
And I was a little bit like, wow, this is, who do I know? And so I was like, wait a minute, I'm going to reach out to these weird guys, you know. So I reached out to Brad and Dylan and told them what I was doing. And thankfully, they had the passion and donated a lot of time.
Bradley definitely has a ton of passion about lighting
and knowledge too. It was, I mean,
it's almost too much knowledge for one man to have about lighting.
Yes,
the degree of perfection that he was trying to attain every single shot on a lot of those.
It's astounding.
It was pretty cool.
It's
and
astounding.
Dylan in his own right, I've met him a few times even after, and just they're always got a camera, always filming.
Yes,
they
want it to look good, and they're willing to work to do it. And again, I look back and I'm like, man, these guys dropping out 2 days before production was a godsend.
Yeah.
It literally was, and I could count 100 different stories like that.
Oh, sure.
But Bradley and Dylan were amazing. Tyler Foreman, he did about everything for us. I mean, he was a grip, a drone pilot. He was our backup camera operator sometimes when David Watson couldn't make it, and an amazing production assistant.
Yeah.
He was.
No, Tyler did great.
And he kept people laughing on set. I like a happy set.
Right.
You know, between Tyler's sense of humor and Tana Miller's food, I think we had a really happy set. That was nice.
So go into your casting process now. So you get into your cast. You had Jonna was your casting director for the piece. Mm-hmm. So go into that, and you ultimately had to make a decision. Was it your intent early on to cast yourself as Vincent?
It was. Vincent's Vow was once just going to be a short. And the very first person I talked to about Vincent's Vow was Debbie Sutcliffe. And we were just going to make a short. I was going to play Vincent.
I love Debbie.
I love Debbie too. She's amazing. And she was going to play Vincent's mom. And that was what we were going to do. We were going to make a short and wanted to do something together. As far as I could tell, we were admiring each other's work and just wanted to work together. And the more that I kept thinking about Vincent's Vow, the more I realized this is a feature. I can't tell this story in a short. There's just no way. And so I reached out to her and told her that I think it's a feature. And she was going to be a producer with me on it. She's like, well, I can't really dedicate that much time on a feature myself as far as a producing role, but I'd love to stay the mom, you know?
Right.
And so
I think she did 2 or 3 films during.
She's amazing.
During Vincent's Vow as well.
Yeah, she's a busy person and did really good. So she was the first person I cast before I even had a feature written. The next person I cast was Madeline Grace. Okay. And the reason why was because she was in Jonna's class, and I had become kind of intrigued by her acting ability. Not just her acting ability, but I knew she could sing and dance. It was rare to see a teenager that young that had so much passion and talent and so much drive that when I was scripting, before I even offered her the part, I actually was visualizing the character of Evangeline as Madeline. And so she, as a person, inspired some of my writing. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to cast her as the part.
Yeah.
No audition necessary. If she's going to inspire who this character is, I'm just going to cast her. So, and then my friend Jacob Brower, I cast as Paul Abrams. He was the third one. And then from that point, we held auditions. And Jonna helped set that up, and we had quite a few people come in.
How many people did you have audition for the movie?
There was over 100. I don't know the exact count, but I know there was over 100. And I think as far as the ones that showed up to the auditions, there's right around 100 people for that. But then we had a lot of video auditions that were sent in as well.
Oh, gotcha.
So I want to say 150, 160 possibly that auditioned.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and in a lot of cases, the answer was obvious, and in some it was incredibly hard for me. In fact, the character of Valentina, there were 3 girls that did just such a good job. I wasn't sure what I wanted, and that ended up being stressful for me, to where I just called Jonna, and I said, Jonna, I need you to pick on this. And without missing a beat, she said Val Bates. And,
yeah, Val did really good.
And I'm so glad she did. Because
she had a lot of really good...
She was Valentina. I failed to see that, but Jonna saw it.
Right.
And she was like Val Bates. She didn't skip a beat. She just knew who it was.
And there was her ability to hit those emotional cues.
Oh my goodness.
that was really neat to watch.
Yes.
Especially on set when you're sitting right next to the person, you're like, oh yeah, you're doing a really good job on that. You know,
she's a phenomenal actress.
You don't want to blow, with an actor, you don't want to blow up their head too much on set.
Right.
But that's one of those things you always sit back and go, oh yeah, she did a really good job on that. Yeah.
You were really holding back when you saw my scenes, weren't you?
I was.
No, I'm just teasing.
I was
teasing. But we were really grateful to have Val. I mean, I was blown away by her ability, and just so grateful that she played Valentina because she knew the character.
Well, and that's the thing, Ducon, and David Mamet has he has a master class, and I watched it one time, and he said something that was very intriguing to me, and he said, and I probably said this before, that the hardest part of acting is realizing how hard it isn't. And
that's intriguing. That's very good thought.
And I think in that same vein, it's those other times that you see people that are performing and you look at it and they do it very effortlessly, because they are in a zone, or whether it's organic or method or whatever you want to call it, the Meisner method. But that, I think that's kind of a testament to where you were at with that film, is you had absorbed so much of it from so many different angles, from the pre-production to the writing to the, the storyboarding. I remember looking, kind of over your shoulder in your shot list. I mean, you had all kinds of funky little ways of having all that stuff written down and knowing what you were going to do at any given time. And it did, in some ways, look like it was a process, but you nailed the character, and because it kind of, I guess in a way it was you. Would you agree?
In some ways, there's a relatability there,
right? So
yes, in that sense, but no in other senses.
Yeah, but you had a context that you based this person off of, and you shared his emotions with certain things.
Yes,
and so I think that it's that resource filmmaking that we look at and go, this is what I have available for me right now, and this is how I'm able to pull this off and do this right now,
Yes.
And you could really see you doing that at, the handful of times that I was on set. That's where and I was really amazed by it. You did a really, really good job on top of everything else that you did, and on top of being a super nice guy on set and very inviting. And, you look at that whole process and go, wow, I was able to make a friend with a guy that had 5 million things on his plate, and he still managed to be nice and inviting and cordial and like genuinely. One of the things I always thought was really neat about you on the set was that you would stop and you would genuinely take an interest in people that were there. And that takes a lot of time, and that takes a lot of effort. But of all the things that I saw you doing, that was probably the thing I thought was the most impressive, was that you could tell you had massive amounts of stress, probably just pounding down on top of you. And, until today you find out, you gave it to God, but he was still able to equip you to still be a good person on set, because if you want to be a bad person, everybody would have given you a pass in some way on set. Go, Ducon's having a bad day.
Dealing with some stuff. Yeah. No, I appreciate that very much. Thank you. And again, I do attribute that to an almighty God, because he taught me that the people are more important than the product.
Very much so.
And I've seen filmmakers abuse people, focusing so much on their product becoming so perfect that they were willing to psychologically abuse cast and crew in order for their product to be their vision,
to get what they needed out of them.
But my approach was, these people are just as important as I am.
And you know what? Now that you say that, though, I've fallen prey to that too, of my perfection, kind of making enemies with my own perfection. And that's something that, you always struggle with as a performer, as someone that makes, creates is you need to keep that in check, because the fact of the matter is that it is about people. It is about trying to build those connections. And if you don't get it right this time, maybe you'll get it right next time.
Sure.
You know?
And you don't want to burn any bridges. And if you create those types of friendships, then in the future, people want to just do stuff with you.
And they'll help you.
And they will, and they'll help you. And I couldn't be any more grateful for, well, maybe I could be more grateful, but I am extremely grateful for the cast and crew that we had, because I feel like that everyone treated me nice.
Right.
The least I could do is treat them nice. You know?
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
And it was really a team effort. As long as we kept the team mindset, we'd have success.
The film is done, and you send it off.
If you ask Mike, it's not.
Well, okay, and I think that's a good conversation, because
it is.
There was a long cut of this film, and is that the current cut that you have?
No, the long cut, I have trimmed 28 minutes off of that. And I'll quote George Lucas here. He says, "You never really finish a film. You just find a good point to walk away." And I've found that point personally. Some people don't like the cut, and that's fine. That's what you're going to get.
Right.
But for me personally, I have a life to live.
So is it like about 2.5 hours then?
It's 1 hour and 57 minutes.
Oh,
so
wow.
Just
so
under,
you got it down to...
Yes. The director's cut is 2 hours, 25 minutes.
Okay.
And that cut will be available. Now,
are you happy with that 2 hour, 25 minute cut?
For the most part.
Yeah.
For the most part. I do like the shorter one. But again, it's all in preference, because, you know, with the longer version, that's the one that ended up at the International Christian Film and Music Festival. Okay. And we won Best Picture for that. And we ended up submitting the shorter cut to another film festival that was smaller and didn't have near the competition that the International Christian Film Festival had, and we didn't even place. So it's all a preference thing, I think.
Did you have to, it's a term that I use, I don't know if anybody else uses it, but did you have to shoot the puppy on the 2 hour, 25 minute one?
Kind of. In other words, for me, I did. And that wasn't... Like
parts that really meant a lot to you,
yes,
that you wanted to keep those in. Because I don't know really much about any of that process. I've heard that there were grueling. Different cuts out there.
Yes, it's a grueling process, because emotionally speaking, as far as the impact of the film goes, I just think the longer version is more impactful, because you set up for the payoffs better.
Right.
But on the shorter version, you're rushing it, so the pacing of the edit can sometimes feel off.
The audience has time to buy into it.
And then there's just some things where they haven't had enough setup to absorb the payoff emotionally.
I gotcha.
And so it lacks that emotional punch that the director's cut has, in my opinion. That being said, the middle of the director's cut, it can start to drag. And so I'm finding there's a good balance there, to where the middle of the film, the act 2, probably just needs sped up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but the third act has never failed to get a good emotional response in both versions.
Did anybody else help you with any of the pace of the edit, or was it just you?
Well, I will say this. My dad, I had watch one of my versions.
But you had another set of eyes that looked at it.
I did, and he gave some very good recommendations as to what I could do with the edit to speed it up and make it more impactful in a visual way, and cut out some dialogue that didn't need to be there.
Was that any part of that? Like, I assume as soon as you got to a certain point, you made a rough cut of the film.
Yes.
Did any of the additional days of filming, did that have anything to do with the cut that you saw, that you said, okay, I need to bridge the gap here on this? So that was part of it then.
Very much so. In fact, one of the additional days, I was shooting some stuff in order to eliminate a couple scenes and bridge the gap.
I gotcha. So you filmed it because you saw there was a more efficient way.
Yes,
to
I
get
saw
from,
a montage in my mind that would still deliver the message to the audience or get them the information that they needed in a shorter amount of time. So it allowed me to cut out a couple scenes and just have a montage that kind of bridges it together.
I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So how scary was that then when you got in there and started looking at it and going, okay, I'm going to have to get back out and do this? Or
after the rough cut?
Yeah.
It's always intimidating, I think.
Yeah.
I think that I get kind of intimidated with the cast and crew, you know.
Because you don't want to impose, or
I don't want to impose, nor do I. I know that they're working hard on it too,
right?
You know, and I know that because of their investment into a film, that they want it to turn out good, and so in that sense, it was intimidating for me to deliver, you know, to where the cast and crew would like it. So yeah, when some of the cast and crew don't end up liking it, then it's a little tough.
Yeah.
It's definitely a little tough. But you're never going to find any movie out there that everybody likes.
You can't please everyone.
You can't.
Yeah.
You just can't. And so I told the story I wanted to tell, and I'm satisfied with that. And you know, a couple of the team members would like to have a go at making their own cut of it. But me, myself, I'm like George Lucas said, I found a good point to walk away.
Right.
I got to go do other things. So
that's cool though, man.
Yeah.
And, you know, here's the thing: you made your film, and and kind of going back, you got selected as the film at the International Christian.
We won Best Picture, which was a shock.
The other funny thing about that was there was very little, if I'm remembering this correctly, there was very little pre-press on that. You kind of got there at the very last minute. Mm-hmm. There wasn't a lot of these film festivals, they kind of bank on how many people know about the film and how much social media is back behind that film. Mm-hmm. And you didn't have, I mean, you had the production stuff of when we were filming it, but then there was like a long kind of quiet period where everybody's like, I wonder what Ducon's doing with the film, you know? And then that's when, you know, I think that's when everything, but then all of a sudden it was like, okay, guys, it's going international film, you know? Okay. So we're back. We ran out of space on a card. So, and you know, just a side note, when I started looking at podcasts, I started looking at, you know, everybody was like, oh, you need to keep it like 45 minutes or whatever. Oh. All of my podcasts have been about 2 hours long.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, well, you know, you do get into a train of thought or whatever. And, you know, it's, you kind of just got to navigate it and just kind of find out, you know, how that whole process works.
Sure.
Speaking of the process that works, so you've done quite a few films. Mm-hmm. I know that it's probably one of the more touchy subjects and the ones that you don't really want to talk about, but independent film, it still requires money to produce them. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to work for free. Right. And things cost money. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just kind of the harsh reality of this. Unfortunately, Hollywood has figured out a way to navigate that, and take a loss and, you know, move on
and still be okay.
And there are actors out there and directors and cinematographers and whoever else out there that has found a way to make a ton of money doing it.
Sure.
Unfortunately, in the middle of the United States in Southwest Missouri, there isn't a lot of ready opportunities to make a lot of money off of this process.
Right.
So, if you can, just, you know, talking about that process of getting funding to make a film, especially a feature-length film, And can you just kind of share some insight on that? Because it's spooky.
Yeah.
I think it is to a lot of people.
Well, yeah, and it is spooky, and in some ways, Hollywood's ability to make money at this is actually one of the reasons why it's so difficult for independent filmmakers to make money at it, because they make blockbuster type films, and the audiences kind of have that expectation for the movies that they find enjoyable, to where if an independent film doesn't quite reach the technical specs that Hollywood has been able to pull off, then they kind of don't have as much interest.
And stay out of here.
Yes. and in the Midwest, I mean, it's not a big market. It really isn't. But I'll talk a little bit about the process. Now, my thought on it was, I'm not going to get enough crowdfunding to really make this movie.
Right.
I didn't, and maybe that's a lack of faith on my part. I don't really know. But the thought was, I'm going to spend a little bit of money out of pocket, and I'm going to make a proof of concept trailer that I hope touches somebody's heart enough that they would be like, hey, I'm going to invest in this. So I had a 17-page CIO, which is called a Confidential Investment Overview. And what that did is it allowed me to hand these papers to potential investors that basically said, if you invest, this is how much you can expect in return before we, the production company, get anything.
Okay.
And what we did on it was, you'll get 120% return on investment before we start making a dime.
If you get distribution and all that. I mean, there's
some stuff in the paperwork that basically says you understand this is a risk. If it doesn't make any money, we don't owe you anything. You understand as an investor that you're investing this hoping that you can make something, but if it doesn't, we're not held responsible. Right. We're not going to be to blame, right? You're not going to come after us wanting your money back.
Right.
You couldn't make anything. But if we do make money, you will get 120% return on your investment before we start making a dime. And after we start making some, you will get some of that as well.
Okay.
So
you get the first cut, they get the first cut, and then they get potential residual cuts after that.
Yes, absolutely. So I put together that 17-page CIO, and a lot of it isn't just financial information. It's basically say, okay, here's who's attached to the project. Here's what it's about. All the CIO includes all of that.
Kind of the credentials of the people.
Yes, the credentials, in hopes that there's some star power or something like that that entices the investor, saying, okay, this is going to add or increase my chances of getting a return on my investment.
Sure.
So all that was included, including like a table that said, here's what similar films did. This was their budget. This is what they got. This was their return on investment.
Right.
Similar films in this genre within the last 4 years.
And so now you know why they use certain actors in certain films and certain directors attached to those films, because they can be guaranteed that they have a better chance of being guaranteed to get their money back on that.
Yes, absolutely. And they'll do about anything to get some star power, because that's where the investors are like, okay, yeah, I'm in. If so-and-so, The Rock is signed on to the project, then there's going to be a lot of people that go to the theater just because he's in it. I don't care how horrible your movie is. The Rock's in it. Here's $1 million.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So anyway, we have this confidential investment overview. And my next thought was, well, I still got to touch somebody's heart. So I spent $1,700 of my own money to make a 5-minute proof of concept thing. Tried to pay everybody that was involved a little bit. There wasn't a whole lot I could afford, but and we put this together, and we had put together a crowdfunding campaign for the feature, and only got $1,900 out of that.
Wow!
And that wasn't going to do anything.
Was that a little bit of a bop on the head early on?
Yeah, it was. It was, but the whole time I still had in my mind that crowdfunding wasn't going to do it anyway. but I made a quick discovery that I wasn't very good at crowdfunding. I wasn't sure, what I needed to do next, because all I could think of is somebody out there is going to see this and think that there's some potential to it. And then an angel investor contacted me and wanted to sit down with me. And I sat down with him, and he said to me, I wondered why God had allowed me to make so much money this last year. And after seeing your trailer, I didn't wonder anymore.
Really?
Yeah. And right there on the spot, he had given $60,000.
Wow.
To start it was
how much had you budgeted the film, up until that point? How much had you budgeted the film to be?
I had budgeted it at $100,000.
$100,000.
Yeah. Yeah. So
that was a huge chunk.
It was.
In
fact, that was the chunk. That was our working revenue. Obviously, by the time all is said and done, I went way over, to get everything done. So a lot of a budget came out of my pocket as well. But we got it shot. And most of it put together, and I've just been making money and making payments to all the people I owe in order to get the rest of it paid for. So when all is said and done, with what is called sweat equity,
right?
We had one investor that was going to do a lot of work on it that didn't have cash to put into it, but
right.
they put in what is called sweat equity. So we gave them like a percentage credit to where when the movie starts making money, they will get residuals because of their sweat equity, the work that they put into the film. And that was like a $23.5K value. So between the investment, my own money, and that sweat equity, we still ended up being right around 100,000.
Really?
Yeah.
So what is your lesson to someone else out there that is looking at going down this road?
Mm-hmm.
What is the mindset that they should have in their head before they go down that road?
Well, honestly, I'm not entirely sure how to answer this question.
You've got to believe in your process. You've got to believe in your product and what you're trying to do.
Right. But for me, I wasn't trying to make money. That wasn't my first goal. So for somebody that's trying to make money, they've got to have an intriguing enough story.
Right. A
marketable story. And that's where the focus should be, because investors are pretty smart. If they can look at a story,
that's the reason why they have money to begin with.
Exactly,
right?
They're very smart. They know what's marketable.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a story that's marketable, then don't expect to make money. Don't expect to even get investment.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because I've seen a few times, not necessarily in the film realm, but more so in like the community theater realm.
Mm-hmm.
Is you will have people that will go out and ask, obviously people for money.
Mm-hmm. And
typically the people that are asking for money are not the best at managing money in general,
Right.
Because if they were good at managing money, they probably wouldn't
be asking
for it, and it's kind of one of those things that I think you really have to have your I's dotted and T's crossed before you go to somebody, because they can spot you really quick.
Yes.
They go, yeah, I'm not going to do that, or you don't look like a hard worker, or I think it's the sales pitch on that is very nuanced when you get into that kind of stuff. Would you agree?
I would agree. And especially when you're not a known filmmaker.
Sure.
And that's the big challenge, is I wasn't a known filmmaker. Now, I do believe that with this film under my belt and the credentials it's so far gotten, that potential investors look at that, right?
Going forward.
Going forward. And so in my mind, the next one would be easier to get funding for because they can look at what you've done in the past.
Right.
So, but for a first-time filmmaker, you need to be knowledgeable too. You need to be able to sell yourself, because if you can sell yourself, right, you can sell that, hey, I'm going to see this through. That's probably one of the first things that they're going to be asking.
Right.
Is this the type of person that's going to see the thing through, or are they going to get halfway through production and get stressed with somebody and just give up?
Right.
You know, so you need to be committed. Absolutely need to be committed. You need to be able to show that you are to these people. And hopefully they believe in your story as well.
Right. So that takes us into the next thing.
Okay.
Is there a future project that's coming up that you're going to be looking for money on?
Let me put it this way. Filmmaking's pretty far from my mind right now.
Sure.
At the moment. That being said, I'm trying to get caught up on a few things to where I can dive back in. There are 2 feature-length stories that are in my mind and heart that need to be told. And there's quite a few short stories that need to be told. Now, I've made a decision that if the story does not benefit humanity, I will not touch it.
So you're looking at it more for the lack of a better word, the ministry of this idea that you have, and that is your like major focus on your next pieces.
Yes, and it's not just how do I put this? Principles are universal.
Sure.
They're not unique to any specific faith. They're not unique to any specific church or religion or anything. They are universal truths.
Right.
That a monk, an atheist, a Christian, everybody can agree on that.
They all walk into a bar.
They all exactly. They all walk into a bar and they can agree on.
They can agree on that. Yeah.
We may, as humans, disagree on how certain principles are applied, but I think that there is a general awareness that they exist. And that is my approach to filmmaking. I'm not trying to cater to any specific faith or anything like that. Now, some people will say that's kind of suicide.
The beauty of that though is that it unifies.
Right.
And a lot of what's going on right now,
that's what we need.
Not to get out on the weeds on politics and everything else, but a lot of what's going on right now is divisive.
Exactly. And that is my point, is that the principles need to be brought forth, not politics.
Right.
The politics are actually making us ignore the principles that are so essential to a better future society. Yeah. And in my films, if it does not contribute to a better future society, I'm not doing it.
Right.
And to quote Walt Disney, we don't make movies to make money. We make money so we can make more movies.
Right.
So for me, first, it's the movie. It's not. I'm not motivated by the money. I want the message. I want the story to get out, and I don't want it to be preachy either.
Right.
I don't want to preach to anybody or make them feel like that they're preached to. It just needs to be a story that they can observe, and by observing, learn something from it.
And be entertained.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I like to call it the intersection of entertainment and enlightenment.
Yeah.
That's what I try to go for.
Well, and I think that's kind of always been the idea, is that using that platform to entertain, you in essence move people, and you beg the question, and you cause them to start asking the question.
Yep.
And whether it's the hero's journey and what he had to sacrifice or she had to sacrifice to be able to come around and have a positive change in their life, or a change just in general.
Yes.
That's we've been doing that since the beginning of time.
Absolutely.
And we've been telling that story over and over again. And
Right.
What's funny is people still don't get tired of it. We still hunger for
And
content.
we still relate to
yeah.
it. And so manifesting humanity in film creates a connection.
Are one of these going to be a Western?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So
yes.
I'm actually redoing a previous Western I've done because I've found there's this thing called professionals. And
oh, yeah.
when I previously did it, I didn't have a single professional work on it because I just didn't know they were around.
Right.
I thought you had to go to Hollywood to find them. And lo and behold, there's a wealth of talent in the Midwest just right here.
Yeah.
They can really
Springfield,
pull it off.
Missouri.
It's amazing.
It is, whenever I moved back, I had this preconceived notion in my head that I was coming back and I was going to be back home in the state that I love, and I was going to get back into the local theater scene because I had done theater for 25 years, and I just loved it. And I wanted to get back into it. I was jonesing for just to be up on the stage. But when I got here, I kind of felt it was a little hard to get into the theater group here. There was a little bit of a click or a bubble,
Sure.
and I had to kind of bust through it. But what happened was I wound up getting into Jana's class more as an observer, and I met David Barnett.
May he rest in peace.
May he rest in peace. David, I love you, buddy. I miss you.
I love you, David.
But I met David and I met Curtis, and we started like hanging out, and that's how I kind of got into meeting, like I met Hawk and I met, you, just by, kind of 7 degrees of separation. But from that, it really kind of invigorated me in a completely different way. I mean, I'm actually in a film this week, like I start filming on Thursday, and it is a really cool area. And there's a lot of people that have a lot of passion for it. And that's beautiful. I mean, and I don't think I think there are a few of them out there that would like to make a living.
Yes.
Being an actor.
Yes, absolutely.
But it doesn't stop them.
Right.
And God love them that it doesn't stop them. That passion is really, it just kind of bursts through with a lot of people around here. And it's really awesome to see. And that's one of the things I've just kind of loved about this area is that it is about the entertainment. It is about the art form in a lot of ways. And the hope is that we start doing it enough.
Right.
And pretty soon somebody will start paying us to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that if we keep just pushing through, eventually there will be enough revenue.
Well, and Jeff and Jaw with the Sato 48 Film Festival.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that has gotten people excited about this platform. I would only assume over the years. I don't know how many years they've been doing it, but I
think this would be their 17th or 18th.
And you've done quite a few of those, haven't you?
4, I think.
Really?
I think, yeah.
You guys did a great one last year.
Oh, thank you.
The Cure, is it? Yeah.
It was the year before. Oh, well, yeah, I guess
no, it was last year.
It was last year, yeah.
But, I think that's kind of the neat thing about this area is there is a wealth of ability and talent around here.
Yes.
And just a want to do well in it.
And people are nice.
Yeah, they are nice.
That helps. And so, I mean, that encourages me, because I thought, hey, if you want to get a good movie out there, you're going to have to go to Hollywood, but I don't want anything to do with Hollywood. Now.
Right.
I found some good, talented people here. So on this Western, it's about social justice, but not in the way that we talk about it. It's I know that sounds distasteful to people.
Oh yeah, it has a sour sour
it
taste
does, but,
through the mouth. Yeah,
but just like with Vincent's Vow, it completely redefines what social justice actually is. And it has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with gender. It focuses on the root of the problem that we are today, and it's not a political thing. It really isn't. It's an entertaining Western story a very intriguing story.
So you rewrote a original one that you had?
Yes, I wrote it back in 2013.
Oh, wow.
And I've made the film before, but with new things that I've learned and experienced, it's going to retake some shape. And now that I know,
I want in.
You're in, Tom. You're in. When we do it, I'd love to have you.
That'd be awesome. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to do Western.
Oh man, they are very fun and very challenging.
That still is one of my major influences in life.
Westerns?
Is Westerns. You know,
Really?
The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Wow.
Sergio Leone is one of my favorite. It is my favorite film. So spaghetti Westerns, just about any one of them. And then
No kidding.
even
I
going
just don't
into,
see you as that kind of guy.
Oh
That's
yeah,
interesting.
I love them, love them, love them, love them.
Awesome.
And that has always been just a huge. Like I went to Arizona just recently with my wife, and we drove, kind of paralleled Utah, Monument Valley area, and it was just like a dream come true driving out there and like, oh my gosh, I've seen all the old John Ford, John Wayne movies where you can see Monument Valley, and even, you look at even like the most recent Westerns that are out. I love every one of them,
Awesome.
True Grit lately, Open Range. Those are all great, Unforgiven. Those are all great Westerns. So yeah, I'm a huge Western fan.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that about you, but we'll see what the economy does. We'll see how, the film market is, because again, you got to make money in order to keep making movies. We'll see how that goes. And, I'm sure within the next 6 months, I'm going to make a decision on that. The other film that I'm working on is called Empty, EMP tie, electric magnetic pulse tie, and it explores what our world would be like if an EMP bomb went off in our atmosphere and shut down every bit of electronics we have.
Oh my goodness!
It explores that.
We wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah, there's some visceral stuff in this one.
Yeah.
It would. It's gritty.
Those are both interesting.
It's gritty, and again, it's to get to try to get thinking about a few things. What are we dependent on that could disappear tomorrow?
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah,
because it can all go away.
yeah, and then the series of shorts that I'm looking to do are some of them are period pieces.
Oh, cool.
The one I'm really leaning toward is about a guy named St. Lawrence who in the year 258 was grilled alive. For being rebellious to the emperor, but standing for his faith in the process, and just the impact it had on his executioners.
Oh wow!
The ones that were grilling him, the impact that it had on them. I'm leaning pretty hard toward that. So
that's cool, man.
Yeah.
You've inspired me once again.
Oh, thanks, man.
You really have.
Thank you.
Been so much fun talking with you about kind of your process. And Ducon, I just got to tell you, you're one of my favorite people here. Like
Thanks,
I said,
Tom.
you've really kind of shook me and changed my mind on a lot of things, and just in this whole process and this whole thing. But in that process, you've become a great friend to me, and I really cherish that. And I'm glad you came on my podcast to talk.
I am honored.
And to share your insight on all this. And I wish you a lot of luck on the Western, because I really want to be in it.
Okay.
And on your other future projects. And I hope that you keep me in mind to do any little menial task on any one of those, and I'll be there.
Menial
love
task,
working with you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm honored and flattered, and I consider you a very good friend as well. I'm glad we got to visit till 3
We got to talk
o'clock in the
today.
morning.
It was nice.
This is nice. And this is super therapeutic for me.
And it
Very
wasn't
nice.
on like a text message either.
Right. Right. We get to look at each other.
I know.
And hear each other's tone of voice.
Ducon, thank you so much for being here.
Thank
I really
you, Tom.
appreciate it.
I appreciate it as well. Thank you.
You have been listening to the Bravo Creative Podcast. Analysis of your biometrics have been compiled and calculated. You are now a minuscule part of the collective. Enjoy the rest of your pitiful day.